Sunday morning, by this coming Sunday, we'll have the CD ready. And I want you to get that. If you were here, for those who were here, know that the Holy Spirit just brought a powerful word. And I just want to build on, and I guess you would say finish what the Holy Spirit started Sunday morning. We began by talking about how we're called out, but the real word, and I really believe the word for us in 2018 is be intentional. I know some of you follow us on Facebook, and you've seen we're making several posts about being intentional, and it's such a key. It's such a key in life. And so we got into that Sunday morning. We started off spending time on what the Lord just dropped in my spirit right before we came out in prayer about being called out. The two go together because as He calls us out, we're not going to act on what He's calling us out for unless we are intentional about it. And so one of the things that He gave me, and I asked someone to write it down, and of all people to write it down, and He would give it to me. And it just, this doesn't happen at home, but here at church, she did it. My wife.
She's so good.
Because there it was in the offering bag. She usually takes care of that on Sunday morning. When I follow Him, I follow through. Isn't that good? That came from the Holy Spirit. I'm not smart enough for that. So that's why I said somebody write that down. It's true. When I follow Him, I follow through. And I really think that many Christians, much of the church, and individual bodies, we miss the mark by not following through.
That's right, man. Right. Good.
We have good intentions, but because we're not intentional about carrying out our good intentions, our God intentions, those things that God puts in our heart, we fail to follow through. And when we don't follow through, we have all these words from God and these dreams and visions and things that sound good and feel good as we say them, but it just kind of hangs out in space where it's been spoken or said or thought and just dropped because we don't carry it out. And we will carry it out when we stay the course and follow Jesus thoroughly. I'm not talking about, losing your salvation because you're not following Jesus. I'm not talking about not being a Christian. I'm certainly you being here on Wednesday night, just the third day of the new year, and all the excuses other people, didn't come tonight. It's cold. You came on anyway. So I'm not talking about church attendance. I'm not talking about all those things. You understand what I'm saying? I am talking about staying the course of what God reveals in your heart when you're the closest to Him. And so the Lord wants us to get it in our spirit, be intentional. And we understand that as we make these statements and we make a decision, I'm going to be intentional, that we consistently need His help. Amen. And He welcomes us to take the help. We have to be intentional about getting the help from Him so that we can then stay intentional about following Him thoroughly to fulfill His will for our lives. Individually, and then as we bring that together It's collectively, and we're going to see that in these verses. And many of you can quote the first two verses. We're going to go farther because it goes deeper in Romans 12. And you're probably used to them in the King James Version, so I'm going to shake it up a little bit and read from the New Living Translation. And I understand some people get a little nervous when you're using different translations, but this is a translation I've used often, and I have studied thoroughly, and I often compare to other versions, King James Version, New King James Version, so on and so forth. Verse 1, and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship Him.
Amen.
I love the way Paul brings that first verse out and brings it all together as he says this is truly the way to worship Him.